Hey everybody, this is Kit Merker here from Noble 9, and I'm here with Sara Ahbabou, who is a support engineer at Gitlab. Welcome to the show, Sarah. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Well, we were talking before, and we were talking about what to cover. And one thing you said I thought was really interesting is you talked about you not necessarily knowing all the code. It's kind of like different neighborhoods in a code base, and that there's some areas that are sort of your favorite spots so you know how to get around in code. I thought this was a really intriguing idea, and maybe you could share more about the sort of mental map that you have of the neighborhood in a code base.
At GitLab, I know exactly where to look for things and how to get there. The thing is, in outside of this world, I get lost a lot. Like I'll be in a big neighborhood, and there are certain streets that I've never crossed before, and then it'll take me forever to get home just because I'm getting lost in all these new streets. Or like in France, for example, there are streets that are named the same in parallel, and so I don't know which one to take. I'll just take the pretty one, for example. And it's similar to how I find myself in GitLab's code base. Like I've messed with it so much. I looked everywhere. I've ended up in random corners, random classes, random services, and random libraries. And so that actually gave me the opportunity to become a guide. I'll meet new people and I'll tell them, I know where to take you. I'll take you on a on a journey, and I become their person, and then we compare, and it makes me happy actually. It's a nice place to get lost in.
Your background is in software development, so is that help you in kind of how you approach support and helping customers?
Our help comes through our technical knowledge. The choice is either to wait for the next release or the next patch to be ready, versus me knowing exactly where to look, creating a branch for them to work from.
You mentioned that you love using Expo.
They've made it extremely accessible. So they, as in Expo. So JavaScript, I've always loved JavaScript. I've never been in love with JQuery. So when I discovered React, it kind of brought me back to, hey, JavaScript's actually kind of pretty. What I like about it is that it went from being just this language that was created apparently in a very short amount of time, that had to piggyback on Java in terms of popularity in order to make the web more accessible, and I guess for people to stick around eventually, to what it is today. Like it morphed into being a backend language, and it's also developing its own. They're also developing rather their own machine learning library. So that's very interesting. And what Expo does is actually gives you a platform, and they actually help you with from the start to the end. That is, from actually creating your very first app, which we always name something quirky, like my
Hello
awesome
world.
app. Exactly. And you get like an alert saying hello world, to actually releasing it. So it used to be this tool that would be great for prototypes, but I saw that a lot of companies now are using it in production, and it's just, honestly, it feels like kind of like when an indie band, or like very underground, and the singer's great and the bassist amazing, but you don't want to tell everyone. And for me, it was similar. I loved Expo. I couldn't be the gatekeeper to them, and I'm really happy to see what they've made so far.
I like your metaphor. With you mentioned kind of the difference or the spectrum between kind of the hello world first app and production software, and this is an area that I'm particularly interested in. What, in your experience, like, what's the difference? Like, what does it take to really go to scalable, reliable software?
It's the difference between doing one push-up, knowing that tomorrow you'll do two, versus forcing yourself to do 10, failing, and then deciding, what, I'm weak, I'm never moving forward with it. Obviously, with iteration, in my view, comes failure, and with failure comes learning. That would at least prevent from any failures that would result in people not wanting to use your product anymore, or just losing trust altogether. And the importance is knowing where to start, and how to increase it, and to pull from failures, experience from all the failures. I mean, I failed a lot in order to get to where I am today. And at some point in my journey, I accepted that my first attempt will never be perfect. It'll build on the next step. It'll always be a building block. And that's also something I learned when I was on a job hunt. When looking for jobs, I always expected the very first application to be a rejection. And that would eventually lead me to the ninth or 10th application being resulting in an interview. So that's part of the reason I don't see failure as a negative thing. Maybe fail, that's, I guess it definitely has a negative connotation because it means that it did not happen. I don't know if I could advocate or even, start campaign or hashtag thing where people would switch failure to something more positive. But whatever you call it, common sense will, in my opinion, keep you from failing in a bad way, I guess, in a way that would never allow you to get up again.
What was the moment when you decided you wanted to work in software? What was that like? What was your journey like?
I've always been into building stuff, and what software made possible was easier, so to speak, to build things in software than it would be to be, say, to build a house or to learn how to draw in order to be an architect. There were libraries with so many books. I remember picking up a book about Rails, changes that, like the methods no longer existed, but the book was thick. And that itself, like carrying a heavy book, told me that, I was serious. I remember making my first HTML page, and it was Brad Pitt, and at the bottom it says, "I want to buy a burrito." And that's just because I lived on above near a taqueria, and I really wanted their burrito. I used to eat their burritos every day, and that made me feel like $1,000,000.
What about people who don't know where to start, or even looking back at yourself, 5-6 years ago? What do you wish you knew, or what would you tell somebody who's thinking about this and isn't sure how to get started, or where to go? Or is it just go buy a heavy book? I mean, what's your real, what's the advice?
Buying a heavy book just triggered something. I don't remember what exactly, but it probably was a token of a level of determination or a desire to learn that I was getting to know. Now, what I wish I had known then, and what I'd like people to know, is that motivation isn't everything. Motivation doesn't last forever. The perfect picture of a computer with a notebook on the right and a coffee mug or whatever, and that's not programming. That's you wanting a certain future. That's you wanting to eventually be able to take that picture, and maybe that's motivation manifesting in the form of pictures on Pinterest. But take that energy that you have, and I mention energy because I lived in Berkeley for 5 years and I do yoga, so of course I'm going to mention energy at some point in this conversation. Take that energy and use it more as fuel, because at some point, like say a week, 2 weeks into this journey, it's going to suck. Your code is not going to work. There's going to be a semicolon missing somewhere. You're going to make the mistake of looking at the glossary and seeing that you're only one lesson in out of hundreds and hundreds of pages, or hundreds and hundreds of exercises on whatever website you're using. That's what I did. I knew that things weren't going to work out. It sucked when my code didn't work.
When does it get good? What is the satisfaction? What is the dopamine drip for you? Like, is it getting that code to work suddenly after struggling, or is it something else?
Initially, when I got Brad Pitt to appear with a burrito and I could just reload the page and he was still there, that was a win. I remember I turned off the computer and I went to celebrate. I went to get myself a burrito, and I don't think I came back to my desk for a little while. But I remember getting a ball to bounce on using jQuery in one of the courses, and I was so tired, but I understood the concept. And I think you've used jQuery in the past. You know how it's just so messy. Like it's just wrangled, and there's so many like pounds, and then you have a dot for a class, and getting the ball to bounce was a huge win, and that kept me. I started bragging. I think that was around the time I actually started bragging, saying that like I can code. Eventually it turned into running a Rails application and then deploying it, having that run in production, seeing that I have one user or two that are not my friends, or like that are not direct connections to me, or seeing people actually star my code on GitHub.
Well, I really enjoyed talking to you, and I really appreciate you sharing a little bit of insight into your journey and what you think about technology. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Kit. I enjoyed this.
Everybody out there, this is Kit Merker from Noble 9 signing off.